Hello everyone, I am Logan Bowlds, head of school at Stratford Academy in Macon, Georgia, and welcome to our fourth Carline Conversation podcast. We were floored that we had over 125 downloads of our first 3 episodes, and we're looking forward to sharing this month's topic with you. If you haven't had the chance, please visit the Eagle Extra website off the Stratford website and read the blog article for this month's topics, Why Readers Succeed. Today, I have 3 very special guests with me. First, we have Miss Derrill McDavid, who is a member of our English department and was the former assistant editor at Random House. Miss Beth Davis, who has taught in private and public schools for more than 35 years and today serves as the director of our Olson library. And Miss Natalie Pyles, who currently teaches 4th grade reading and grammar and has more than 15 years of teaching experience. Okay guys, to jump right into the topic, why do readers succeed? Miss Davis.
I think one of the most important things that makes every reader they're excited about the content so that they pick what they would like to read. So
Absolutely.
I think that's really important.
Absolutely. Think about the things that we like to read. We gravitate towards where our interests are, and that's an excellent point. Miss McDavid.
I think readers succeed, and I'll touch on this in just a little bit, because their brains quite literally develop differently than non-readers, but they also succeed, and I think this is a strong point, because they have a stronger understanding of not just the world around them from their reading, but also of themselves. And going back all the way to the ancient Greek sages, Plato, Socrates, the oracle at Delphi, that maxim, to know thyself. And that's what books introduce young readers to, is the human experience, and through the human experience they come to a deeper understanding of themselves.
Sure, very well said. Now, Ms. Pyles, as a lower school teacher, we've got our kids in our most kind of formative stages of their reading. What do you see as some of the most important ways that you can support them and encourage them to be these lovers of reading?
Well, it is a very pivotal moment in their lives. Up until 4th grade, they're basically just learning how to read.
Sure.
And at this point, they are now reading to learn. And 85% of what they learn for the rest of their lives is going to involve reading. Sure. So it's so important and so important. I think my job is to just inspire them to love it. And then to teach them how to be a smart, savvy reader, to know what to look for and how to approach a text. I try to make reading a social experience through book clubs and reading circles and partner share, and we do book tastings in 4th grade. Especially for reluctant readers or struggling readers, I think treating it like a social experience is important, because we all have a natural drive to want to share our experiences.
Sure.
And I think that includes reading. You want to share your responses, you want to share your reactions to what you're reading. And so by doing that, it makes reading less of an isolating experience, less of a solitary one. I think it's important to expose them, like Beth said, to a variety of, just to an unlimited amount of materials in different reading levels, across genres, so that they can choose.
Absolutely. And I think what's really important too is, as we said, the social experience, the exposure to as many texts as possible, so that they can continue to navigate their own likes and dislikes. And I think about, the books that we've all read independently of not being forced to read these texts, but finding books that you're really passionate about and then falling in love with an author and falling in love with a series or genre and then being so addicted to it. And it continues to cultivate that love of learning, or love of reading so early on in such formative stages, regardless of the stage that we're trying to get our students engaged in. Now, Derrill, how do you think reading digitally has changed the way our children are reading? I know that there are pros and some cons, so kind of walk us through that.
Well, I think we're obviously living in an era of explosion of reading,
Sure.
right? I mean, even 150 years ago, books really weren't widely available for everyday families. And so we're suddenly living in a world where we're reading all the time. Text messages, Wikipedia sites, emails. Even in the era of TikTok,
Sure.
users distinguish themselves by their pithy handles or phrases they have pop up on the screens around them. So in a lot of ways, we have this very obvious pro that reading and text to read are just so much more available, and they're around us all the time. One of the cons, actually, that's really interesting, there's sort of some new research about this and a couple of new books that have been published on this, that deep reading, what we call kind of immersive reading, which is what happens with a book, creates these complex cognitive functions in your brain, and your brain actually rewires itself when you're in this immersive reading state. And what the research has shown is that when we read on screens, so whether it's computers or cell phones or whatever, they call the reading that we do, our eyes shift and dart. And you can probably see that.
Sure,
I mean, you can imagine
yeah.
this on a screen as you're scrolling and shifting and darting, and there are ads popping up and all of this. And so you're prevented, actually, on a screen, even if it's a Kindle book, you're prevented from entering that immersive state where your brain actually rewires itself. So in some ways, we're in this incredible world of reading, but in other ways, we have to be really conscious about the kind of reading choices we're making, and whether we might want to take a trip to the bookstore that weekend and pick up a novel for the beach rather than taking our tablet.
Sure.
So.
That's very accurate. I think about myself, the things that I read on a screen versus what I read in a book, and the whole idea of when I truly get lost in a book, you're so that deeper reading where I don't know if I've ever gotten lost on a website.
Yeah,
the idea of having being so tuned in that you're tuning out everything else.
Yeah.
So that is a excellent distinction.
Especially notifications popping up.
Oh, constantly, right? You're constantly distracted to where you can't achieve that deeper reading mode. Sure.
And every year students come to us and they have less reading stamina. And I think that's part of it too. You don't have to have a lot of stamina for some of that type of reading.
Right.
And if you don't have it, it's difficult. And
Sure.
especially the older you get in high school.
Which is why those younger grades are so important to develop those, again, those formative years to create that love and for that stamina.
And having uninterrupted reading time is one of the reasons that they succeed. And when you're on a device, you tend to stop and start.
Right.
You're very
your mind
interrupted
wanders,
on a
yes.
device, there's no doubt. And now, Beth, not every reader finds immediate success. It does sometimes take a long time. And y'all talk about the stamina and stuff, so maybe they don't have stamina and eventually try to cultivate it, within them. For many students, it's actually a struggle and a challenge. So what advice would you give to parents and teachers who want to support these readers?
Well, I think being positive in all of their reading endeavors, whether or not you're a teacher or the parent, I really feel like that's one of the most important things. Have a positive environment for them to read, have positive things to say, let them select their own books. If they would rather read a sports book than a history book, then just being positive about what they do. And I think that even in high school, I have students that come in the Olson library and they're hooked on a mystery series. And it might not be something that I like, but I try to interact with them and be positive.
Sure.
So I think that really helps.
There's no doubt.
It's just giving them a chance to read what they do like.
For sure.
Yeah.
And something I try to encourage young families like myself is how important it is to model reading in front of your children.
Yes.
And I think about how important it is when I complain that, my own daughter won't sit down with this book and study it. And I think, well, when is the last time I have modeled doing that in front of her, as opposed to just turning on the TV or opening up the laptop or looking at my phone? So modeling is so important at these young ages particularly.
Well, and I love what Beth said too about the freedom of choice, of allowing them to, giving them that kind of opportunity to chart their own course in reading. So much of school reading is, you have to read this book for class, you have to read this for summer reading. And so just encouraging that sense of freedom around
Absolutely.
it as well.
Now, looking back as adults, is there a particular book that you read in school or a genre that you feel like made an impact on you personally?
Everything I read in high school and college has made an impact on me personally.
Sure.
That's why I became an English teacher. But there's one book there's one short story that has sort of stuck with me, for better or worse, over the course of the last 50 odd years. And it's called The Ones Who Walk Away from Omelas. And it's by Ursula Le Guin. And basically it forces the reader to ask themselves, what amount of human suffering or what injustice am I willing to accept or tolerate to preserve my own way of life or to protect and my own happiness? And I think that's a question that everybody needs to ask themselves at one time or another, or at least understand that sometimes our cushy lives and our status quo is built on the misfortune of others or groups. So I just think that was, and over the course of the years, things will happen in politics or in my own personal life or at school, and I will be reminded of that book and that question.
So yeah, the lingering effects, and again, isn't that so great when you read something and it stays with you for such a long period of time?
It's like slaps you in the face.
Ms. McDavid, anything come to
Well,
mind?
I'm with Ms. Pyles, obviously, as an English teacher. So many things I read had an impact on me, but I think actually, and this sort of ties into you, I vividly remember reading and studying Nathaniel Hawthorne's The Scarlet Letter. And I think when we were in high school and reading it, it was the first time that symbolism suddenly came to life for me. This idea that these sort of small objects, the scarlet A on her chest, could have this immense impact and hold this power of emotion and depth of experience and kind of relate to this greater, wider world, and it's all contained in this one tiny symbol. And so I think like Ms. Pyles says, just being able to put all of this background of human experience into reading, into a story, and be able to share this with someone else, be able to say, let me tell you a story, and then have that story impact them for the rest of their life because they can hold on to these small, tangiable things. The Scarlet Letter.
Yeah, that's very, no doubt. Ms. Davis?
I love The Great Gatsby.
It's a great book.
The characters in The Great Gatsby, just throughout life, I could remember Daisy doing certain things, and so
throwing all those shirts.
I think that's a memorable book for me would be the times that I read it in high school, then I read it in college, and then I reread it recently.
Yeah,
so
and then to continue to have it
continue to have
you
it.
Remember it.
So it's just like their examples. It's just something that stuck with me.
Sure. And then going along with that, your all-time favorite book title. It might be Great Gatsby still, but your all-time favorite book. And I can think for me, and it was because I was a child when they were released, was Harry Potter, the entire Harry Potter series. That is what took a kid who really had no interest in reading and hadn't cultivated an interest yet and started a lifelong love of reading. And to the point now where I don't discriminate between any genre. I will read anything that is put in front of me, and I would like to attest to the fact that I believe Harry Potter started a love of that, of just literature and of reading. Absolutely. And so what do you think? All-time favorite books, what comes to mind? Ms. McDavid, you look like you brought a prop for us today.
Because it just happened to be on my shelf. The Once and Future King by T.H. White is about the rise and fall of Arthur's Camelot. And as a former publisher as well, I respect to no end the people who write these flap copies. And this one's so short and so good that I just have to read it because it just encompasses it all. The whole world knows and loves this book. It's the magical epic of King Arthur and his shining Camelot, of Merlin and Owl and Guinevere, of beasts who talk and men who fly, of wizardry and war. It is the book of all things lost and wonderful and sad. It is the fantasy masterpiece by which all others are judged.
Wow.
And I think,
powerful.
like Harry Potter, it's this just immensely incredible book.
Sure. Ms. Pyles?
I cannot pick the book that I love the most. I just really can't. I love Harry Potter. Such a fan. I won't even read The Cursed Child because I don't want to in any way disgrace my memory.
I'm the same way.
I want it to just be...
Or the Dragons book, the other one that came out, this new series that's born. I know, I refuse to move on from the original.
But so I haven't always taught fourth grade. And I've really enjoyed getting into middle school literature because that wasn't really around when I was coming along. I mean, we had Tales of Fourth Grade Nothing and then it went straight to high school. But Walk Two Moons by Sharon Creech is an excellent middle grades novel, or if you're a strong fourth or fifth grade reader, it'd be great for you too. It's a little difficult to get into, but it just celebrates the art of storytelling. There's so much in it. The quacky, wacky grandparents and the quest to find oneself, and there's an actual journey involved, and there's mystery. And it's just such a sweet, hopeful book. I love that one.
That sounds great. Ms. Davis, we're going to stick with Great Gatsby.
No, I'm not. Because I have a background in lower school, I selected some lower school ones that are my favorites. And it reminds me of my childhood. They're all fairy tales. I think fairy tales are so important to read. I love Little Red Riding Hood, Three Little Pigs. I'll have to say probably The Three Little Pigs is my favorite.
Is your favorite?
It's a favorite.
Well, it's great too because it not only encourages a love of reading because the topics are so easy for young children to latch to, but also the idea of imagination and stuff that just is so important for kids.
What's so neat about fairy tales now is we might have 6 versions of Jack and the Beanstalk,
Very true.
8 of the Little Red Hen, and to study those with children and then do a culminating activity. But probably fairy tales are my favorite.
Absolutely.
And all the ways that people have rewritten them too. I mean, you get into more advanced reading where people have gone back and taken these fairy tales and turned them on
They're
its
so complex
head,
now,
you know,
and turn them on their head. And
from a different point of view. I mean, it's incredible. They're these sort of nugget stories that just last and last and last. Yeah.
Well, thank you 3 very much for being here. If it's not obvious enough, you can see why readers succeed because I have 3 lovers of reading sitting in front of me who I would say are quite successful. So thank you for joining us for our 4th Carline Conversation. Again, you can find these on the Eagle Extra website, on the Stratford website, and we look forward to many more in the months to come. Thank you.